distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you all to this webinar with the theme Women in the Implementation of AfCFTA in Nigeria, organized by the Organization of Women in International Trade, OWIT Nigeria. OWIT Nigeria is essentially driven by the global mission statement of our mother body, OWIT International, which supports the advancement of women in international trade and businesses. We are a non-profit organization that umbrellas an array of women entrepreneurs thoroughly engrossed in diverse business and services for international trade. Particularly, OWIT Nigeria exists to support the advancement of women in international trade and businesses through effective and effective partnership, networking, and educational opportunity. In pursuit of this aforementioned, OWIT Nigeria employs holistic place-based program for women at all levels in order to effectively address knowledge and skill deficiency in relation to understanding and operating within the trade protocol, laws, policy, and procedure, as well as other informal trade and business environments. In addition, OWIT Nigeria engages with various trade and business enabler on advancing gender-sensitive approach to trade as an essential component of effort to eradicate poverty and promote sustainable and other people-oriented development. Today's webinar is aimed at discussing the implementation process of African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, in Nigeria, and the need for effective gender mainstreaming, which will be critical to help women harness the potential under the agreement. The AfCFTA framework, which includes an objective of gender equality, Article 3E, which can only ride on principles of gender mainstreaming. Indeed, gender mainstreaming embodies the most important promise of 2030 agenda to leave no one behind. The 2030 gender agenda also makes it clear that there can be no sustainable development without gender equality. Without doubt, the AfCFTA will only live up to its potential if the benefits from intracontinental trade are inclusive and if it leaves no one behind across the continent. Women are constantly marginalized and disappropriated, engaged as key stakeholders. In Nigeria, entrenched gender inequalities are perceived across economic, political, social, and environmental space, mitigating against inclusive and sustainable development. For AfCFTA to effectively enhance economic opportunity for women-owned business and for informal cross-border trade, addressing context-specific challenge faced by women in the implementation of AfCFTA and other provision is paramount. We strongly support numerous provisions in AfCFTA that can bring significant benefit for women. These benefits are subsequent to existing gender neutral policy. As emphasized by different trade experts, intra-trade African trade liberation could worsen existing gender gaps if the necessary steps are not taken to prevent or alleviate potential adverse effects arising from aftermarket liberation. Most importantly, ensuring that women leverage the transformative potential of intra-trade African expansion must be premised on the design and implementation of gender-sensitive trade programs, buttressed with context-specifically assessment measure. While Nigerian government is urged to strongly employ provision in trade liberation to advance its commitment of gender equality, other stakeholders are similarly employed to be deliberate in addressing existing gender-blind approach in trade in Nigeria. At OWIT Nigeria, we diligently seek to provide gender-focused intervention towards the achievement of global adopted sustainable development goal, which seeks to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. In this regard, we are constantly positioning to adequately support the ability of women traders, entrepreneurs, and producers to respond to new trade opportunity created by AfCFTA. While looking forward to a very engaging meeting, we hope outcomes from today will serve to advance the cause of women participation under AfCFTA in Nigeria and across the African continent. Once again, I welcome you all to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amiable President, for that fantastic address. We look forward to having this implemented in Nigeria, and we look forward to a communique after this webinar. I'll be calling on our first speaker. She will be talking on women's competitiveness in the implementation of AfCFTA in Nigeria. And she is Ms. Kemi Arosanyin. She is an international trade development specialist and director for Africa Trade Expansion Program at the World Trade Center, Miami. In this role, she promotes market integration, creates market access, and facilitates two-way trade between the Western Hemisphere, that is North America, South America, and the Caribbean, and the Sub-Saharan Africa. An international trade scholar and a certified global business professional, CGBP, in the United States with over 20 years of experience in trade finance, market research, international marketing, and trade development. Kemi is an active member of prominent international trade organizations. She served on the NASBITE International Board of Governors, and she is a member of the Intra-African Trade Fair Advisory Council, IATF, an initiative of Afrexim Bank and the African Union to facilitate economic development in Africa by promoting intra-Africa trade. Ms. Arosanyin is a regular speaker and panelist at international trade conferences. She writes for the Global Trade magazine, and many of her articles have been featured in the quarterly magazine for the Association of International Credit and Trade Finance Professionals. Please welcome Ms. Kemi Adesoye as she comes forward to speak on the women's competitiveness in the implementation of AfCFTA in Nigeria. You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, OWIT Nigeria, for bringing me on this afternoon to discuss this very important subject, women in the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Area. So just give me a second to share my slides. We'll be going through a short presentation as I make my remark. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thank you very much. Today we are going to be discussing African Continental Free Trade Area and how it should be implemented in Nigeria. By now, I assume that all small businesses in Nigeria, whether businesses that are run by women or men, aware of the African Continental Free Trade Area by now. But in my short presentation, I will go through the overview quickly, just in case there's anyone out there that does not have enough information about the key benefits of the free trade area and what they should expect in the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area. But before I go into my presentation, I will show you some numbers. I will show you some of these numbers are already, you're already familiar with some of these numbers. A few of them will jump out to you immediately. Some of them that you are not aware of because you probably have not come across the report that published those numbers. I will quickly explain what those numbers mean. A lot of people will be familiar with this number, 1.3 billion. That is the population of the African continent. And what the Continental Free Trade Area does is to bring the entire continent together as a single market to present to the world a consumer market of 1.3 billion people. This will be familiar to a lot of people here as well, those that have been following the African Continental Free Trade Area. This is a combined GDP of the entire continent under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So as a single market, Africa is presenting a GDP of $3.4 trillion to the world as a place to do business. This is a familiar number. This is a familiar number as well. In the Continental Free Trade Area, Africa has 55 countries, but 54 of the 55 countries are already participating in the free trade agreement. Other set of numbers, this number, for example, may be something that a lot of people are not familiar with. That number was obtained from a World Bank report that says that in Africa, as at 2015, 450 million people are living in extreme poverty. And the same World Bank report have investigated and given us the potential of the African Continental Free Trade Area. When this Continental Free Trade Area is fully implemented and effectively implemented, what will be the impact of the free trade area on reducing this huge number of people living in extreme poverty? People, according to the World Bank, people living in extreme poverty are those that live below $2 a day. And people living in moderate poverty are people living with less than $6 a day. So based on the analysis of the World Bank, we have been told that if the African Continental Free Trade Area is well implemented, that it has the potential to lift 30 million people out of poverty between now and 2035. Out of these 30 million people, 12 million of them will be lifted out of poverty from West Africa, where Nigeria belongs. If we look at the population of West Africa, the ECOWAS, it currently has about 387 million people in terms of population size, market size. And Nigeria alone accounts for about 51% of that. So if African Continental Free Trade Area is well implemented in Nigeria, it has the potential to lift at least 6 million people out of extreme poverty in Nigeria. We need to have this at the back of our minds as we go through the stage by stage, and what we need to do as a people, what the role of women and others that would ensure that this very great opportunity that we have is well implemented to accelerate economic growth in Nigeria and to take the country to where we need to be. So quickly, a lot of people are familiar with the fact that the African Continental Free Trade Area is a continental market integration agenda that brings the entire continent together as a single market. As I said before, 54 countries are participating in the free trade area, which makes it the largest free trade area in the world in terms of the number of participating countries. This particular initiative was promoted and negotiated by the African Union. It was first signed in 2018, March 2018 in Kigali. Nigeria signed in July 2019, and I guess recently it was ratified by the country. So the implementation start date has now been set for January 2021, which is less than a month away, and everyone has to be involved in the implementation of this very great opportunity and tool that we have right now. What are the benefits? A lot of people have said, well, maybe this does not concern me. I do not have a role to play in this. Every African has a role to play in this, and I will explain that in the course of my presentation. But basically, the benefit of the free trade area is it gives access to a larger market. I've talked about the fact that the entire continent comes together under a single market, and it presents a market size of 1.3 billion. That's way more than the 200 million market size that Nigeria has now. It gives us access to a unified continent and a simplified market. And I will explain those words in a few minutes. How it does that is by removing trade barriers to ensure free flow of goods and services. It harmonizes trade regulations and creates uniform standards. And as I have said, the World Bank has informed us that it has the potential to lift 98 million Africans out of poverty over the next 10 to 15 years, out of extreme and moderate poverty. But to just quickly talk about the key benefits, a lot of people understand free trade area to mean that it will remove tariff barriers. It's not going to remove tariff barriers alone. It's both tariff and non-tariff barriers. Those tariff barriers are the fees, the duties you pay to customs, and the other charges that you pay when you are exporting or you are importing products from, when you are engaged in cross-border trade. But for me, the most important benefit that I really want to highlight in a few minutes is actually the harmonization part of the benefit. Before the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, different countries have different regulations. Just the same way we have NAFDAC regulating what comes into Nigeria and the quality of products in Nigeria. Kenya has its own NAFDAC equivalent. South Africa has its own NAFDAC equivalent. So if you want to export to Ghana, you have to meet the requirements for that market. You have to meet the requirements for Kenya, which may be different from what obtains in South Africa. But under a uniform standard, the same product that you're producing in Nigeria would have to comply with that uniform standard, and the same product can be, exported to different parts of the continent, the entire 54 countries that have been that are participating in this agreement. And that's huge, because for anyone who is involved in international trade, you will know that product adaptation to meet the requirement of each market is very costly. So what this does is it has created a level playing field for everyone, and it's going to really improve competitiveness. So the question is, why is it important for Nigeria to get the implementation right? Why is it important for Nigeria to really pay attention and ensure an effective implementation of this free trade area? There's so many reasons why Nigeria should really have an effective strategy to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area. But I will quickly, because of our time, I'll quickly talk about two reasons. The first reason is it is very, very risky. The risk of poor implementation or non-implementation in Nigeria is really enormous. I relate with, in my role where I work, I relate with other African countries, and I understand and I know how they are preparing for an opportunity like this. So if Nigeria does not implement this well, it means that our small businesses and our women will not be able to build the capacity to export their products to other markets. And if they don't export to other markets, whether Nigeria exports to other markets or not, other markets are coming in. Other countries are ready to come into the Nigerian space. And what it means is that there will be more competition for Nigerian businesses. So if you are doing business in Nigeria today, as a small business, and you are making a sales of 10 million naira a year, when competition comes, it will reduce your market share to maybe 70% or 80%, but it's definitely going to take away your market share. So it's very important. I mean, before the African Continental Free Trade, a very typical example that will be very clear to people doing business in Nigeria is a few years ago, Morocco from North Africa was agitating and applying to be part of ECOWAS, to join ECOWAS. Morocco wanted to join ECOWAS basically because they want to access the Nigerian market. So whether Nigeria, participates in this agreement or implement it properly and ensures that Nigerian businesses have the capacity to also export and compete outside, other countries that are coming will definitely encroach into the market, invade the market, and it becomes harder for Nigerian businesses to be able to survive within their local market. That is the first critical reason why it's important for Nigeria to get this right. The second point I'd like to talk about before I move on in my presentation is that this is actually the only lifeline that Nigeria has right now to reboot its failing economy. currently, right now, the economic indices in Nigeria is not looking good. The GDP growth this year, based on the impact of COVID-19, the projection is that Nigeria is going to have an economic contraction to the tune of 4.3%, meaning that the GDP is going to shrink. In 2018, the Nigerian economy grew by 1.9. Last year, 2019, it grew by about 2.2%. And this year, that economy is not going to grow, it's contracting. So this is the only lifeline that Nigeria has. This is the stimulus package that Nigeria has. This is the palliative that Nigerians can depend on, actually. If you look at why the GDP is going to go down, the crude oil is really at a very low price, lower than what was projected when Nigeria was planning the budget for this year. And I don't want to go into each of those indices. And I will also quickly talk about declining export. Nigerian export has really significantly declined this year. I'm not following the numbers of Nigerians export, total export to other markets, but I track export between Nigeria and the United States. And I know that last year, the total export from Nigeria to the US was $4.6 billion. It came down from about $7.7 billion in 2017. 2018, it was $5.6 billion. It came down to 2019 to about $4.6 billion. So far, for the first 9 months this year, Nigeria has only done a total export about $1 billion to the US. Maybe at the end of the year, it will just be around $1.3 billion. So the impact of COVID-19 is very severe on all countries, but particularly also in Nigeria is very profound. So what is the way forward? What can we do to really help our economy and to help businesses in Nigeria to thrive, even in the, based on even the impact of, to cushion the impact of COVID-19? We have to increase trade, and basically it is exports that we need to focus on. Trade is in two parts, as you know, import and export. No one really promotes import. What we need to promote is export. That's why all countries on earth have a department to promote export, and there's a huge budget for it. And serious countries that have made progress have done that. There is no country that can, that has significantly, there's no country that has significantly grown their economy or accelerated economic growth without focusing on exporting. Yes, so what we need to do is to develop our export capacity within the regional market, which is what the African Continental Free Trade Area gives us an opportunity to do, and also to global market. We need to develop both export in trade in goods and trade in services. Trade in services is something that a lot of people have not really focused on. I will talk about it towards the end of my presentation. And when we focus on building
Madam Kemi, please unmute your speaker. We can't hear you. Please unmute your microphone. We can't hear you right now. Madam Kemi, please unmute your microphone. We can't hear you right now. And only you can do that. Unmute it. Okay, thank you.
Madam Kemi, can you unmute yourself, please? Nobody can hear you.
I just did. You didn't hear me?
Yes, you've been off for a while.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Can I go back? Where was the last slide you had me? Where do I start from? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, madam.
Do you want me to go back a few slides back, or should I just continue? Because of our time.
It's fine.
Just to the previous slide.
This slide or where?
Yes, you can start from here. You can continue from here, ma'am. Yes.
Sorry about that. There must be some technical problem from somewhere. Okay, I was talking on this slide, I talked about why it's important for Nigeria to get the African Continental Free Trade Area implementation right. And I spoke about two reasons, even though there's so many reasons why it's important for Nigeria to get it right. The first reason is that it's very risky for Nigeria not to, implement the agreement effectively, because competition will come into the market. Whether Nigeria is interested in exporting to other regional markets or not, other countries are interested and they are coming. I talked about the fact that Morocco was trying to come into ECOWAS a few years ago because they really wanted to access the Nigerian market. And so if Nigeria does not develop small businesses and women businesses to have the capacity to export to other markets, other countries will come into the country and they will compete with Nigerian businesses, and that market share will shrink for Nigerian businesses, and it will be difficult for Nigerian businesses to survive in their own market. And then I talked about the fact that it's the African Continental Free Trade Area seems to be the only lifeline that Nigeria has right now to reboot the seriously challenged economic situation that the country has right now. GDP has been projected that it will contract by 4.3%. We are all aware of crude oil price that has really fallen below the budget price. And I also talked about the declining export, that historically Nigerian export has been declining, even though I'm not tracking other numbers, total export of Nigerian to other markets, but between Nigeria and the US, there's been a consistent decline in the export of, in total export from Nigeria to the US market. And I gave examples of how it has declined, because in 2019, total export from Nigeria to the US was about $4.6 billion. But in 2018 so far, 2022 so far, we're going to just have about $1.3 billion, which partly is also, part of that will be the impact of COVID-19 as well. So I talked about the way forward, which is to increase trade at the regional level and global level. And trade means we have to increase export. What we really need to focus on is to increase export. So export in goods and also in services. A lot of people do not really understand how they can, people in the service industry do not really understand how they can be involved in international trade. If I have the time again, I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of my presentation. But quickly, if we focus on exporting, we are going to be able to facilitate global market integration, accelerate economic growth, reduce poverty, and enhance competitiveness. And I wanted to quickly talk about the benefits of international, how women have benefited from international trade. Historically, I got this from the World Trade Organization report, that there's sufficient evidence to prove that international trade has benefited women in so many ways by increasing economic equality and welfare, higher wages and better jobs for women that are involved in international trade. And many of them have been able to move from other sectors, manufacturing sectors or agricultural sectors, to the service industry, because the service industry now employs more women than manufacturing. Also, Afreximbank recently reported that 51% of informal trade on Abidjan-Lagos corridor is conducted by women. And I want to say a few things about this. This is a major issue that needs to be addressed under the African Continental Free Trade Area, because too many women are involved in informal trade. These are women that are involved in trade for self-sustenance, unstructured businesses, unregistered businesses. And businesses like this are not captured under any government database. So government is not able to plan for them. They don't have access to resources or training, and they are exposed to physical harassment and extortion. So this is an area where women really need to focus, because we have too many women that are involved in informal trade in Nigeria and the neighboring countries, and also involved in cross-border trade with our neighbors. But all these are all offline and unstructured trade. And what is the role of women in the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area? Basically, women have two responsibilities, in my opinion. And the first responsibility is personal preparedness. Women must be prepared to take advantage of this. By preparing right now, I expect all women in Nigeria, all women doing business in Nigeria, to have a regional orientation. You need to change your mindset. Whatever business you're doing, whatever you are selling, you must have a plan to sell beyond the Nigerian market. You must be, right now, since the implementation is just a few weeks away, right now I expect that every woman that is involved in business in Nigeria in any form should, plan to expand their businesses beyond the local market, the Nigerian market. And how to do this is to begin to assess your readiness for export. Begin to assess your financial situation, whether you need to increase your capacity. If you have a changed mindset and you have a regional mentality and orientation, and you know that whatever you are producing is no longer for the local market in Nigeria, it's beyond the Nigerian market, and you have to look at the regional market, then you begin to assess whether you have the capacity or you need to build more capacity. You also need to assess the quality of your products. You need to begin to talk to your banks right now to see where you can, what your financial opportunities and financial resources are that will be available to you to expand your market. You also need to educate yourself and educate others. And by educating yourself under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, I spoke at the beginning of this presentation about the benefit of harmonization. Now it means that everyone will have a uniform standard. So whatever product you have right now, you need to ensure that it complies with that uniform standard. So for you to comply, you need to understand what those standards are. So you need to really be involved in training that will give you a breakdown of all the requirements under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, what the standards are, what the regulations are in terms of your packaging, in terms of your quality, in terms of your labeling, all the requirements that you need to comply with. Because once you comply with that, and for the local market, the same product you can sell to other markets in that same form. And lastly, under personal preparation, you need to develop a winning strategy. A lot of businesses are still not online. E-commerce is huge, and COVID-19 has taught us that this is the future of business. You need to take your business further. A lot of businesses in Nigeria do not even have website. You need to have a Facebook account. You need to be able to reach out to the outside world. This e-commerce is going to be very key in how you are able to reach out. The African Continental Free Trade Area have to give you this caveat or this warning. It's an agreement. It's a market integration instrument. It is just a tool. It's not going to automatically guarantee export. It's not going to automatically guarantee economic growth. It has to be implemented. It has to be driven. Each person must be prepared to take advantage of that opportunity. So you must have your own strategy to survive and to prosper under that agreement. The agreement is like any other tool that we've had, and I'm really very worried because Nigeria does not have a record of effective implementation of agreements. We've had ECOWAS for 40 years or for about 45 years, and total trade under ECOWAS is still around 7%. Trade within ECOWAS is still around 7%. We've had AGOA for about 20 years, and utilization under AGOAs is still very, very dismal. So this is why it is important that we cannot also leave every responsibility to government. Government has a role to play in this, but individually, you need to do your part by ensuring that you have the capacity to do what you need to do, by you ensuring that you really understand the agreement and how you can benefit from the agreement, how you can make your products to comply with regulations under that agreement. I talked about franchising briefly here. This is what the people in trade and in services can use. Services like hospitality, you are running restaurants, you are in the media, entertainment, healthcare, professional services, and all retail. This is an avenue, this is a business model that you can use to reach out. But also part of the preparation is that you need to be prepared to go out there. There's no buyer that will come and meet you in Nigeria. Afrexim Bank and African Union have this trade fair called Intra-African Trade Fair. You would have heard about it. It's going to take place in Kigali in 2021 in September. Prepare to go there. This is how you can, be involved in the implementation and ensure that your business is protected both locally and also for you to be able to expand your market. If you don't do that, I'm really very worried that a lot of Nigerian businesses will lose market share when other countries begin to invade the market. And the second obligation that women have is to come together as a group. Women organizations like the OWIT, civil society groups, other private sector must come together to engage stakeholders, and which include government, to increase investment in education and infrastructure for women, to improve access to resources and financial support, and most importantly, to create programs that are gender-friendly towards women. Programs that are specifically focused on providing technical support for women. So promoting export is really huge business in most developed markets. And most countries have been able to do that by having sufficient funding to promote exporting and also having a very good strategy. Export does not just grow. Exporting is not an event. It is a journey, and it requires a lot of strategy. It requires a coordinated effort to really grow export for any country. In conclusion, I want to talk about, what I want you to take away from this presentation is the fact that Africa Continental Free Trade Area is the market access instrument, and it depends on how that instrument is utilized. It does not automatically guarantee anything. What it guarantees is that Nigeria is a participating country, and it opens Nigerian market to other countries to play. How Nigeria, performs in that framework, in that agreement, is totally up to how it is implemented and how the information that is disseminated to the business community and how small businesses take advantage of this opportunity. And I have emphasized the fact that other markets are coming in to do business in Nigeria, and rightly so, because 54 countries have signed up to this agreement, and they will be operating within their rights to come into the Nigerian market and to play in the Nigerian market. So effective implementation is very, very critical, and personal preparedness is a must for small businesses and for women. So for your takeaway in this place, you need, every woman should begin to address or assess her readiness and begin to go through the export readiness checklist right now to be sure that this market access instrument is well utilized and that your business is well prepared to take advantage of this opportunity. Thank you very much. I will be around to take questions, and sorry about the technical difficulty at the beginning of the presentation. I hope you got something out of that.
Thank you so much. Amazing, amazing, amazing. You have touched on a lot of things, and I am very sure the participants have taken a lot out of this presentation. I'm so wow that implementing this correctly will lead 98 million Nigerians out of poverty. This is wow. And again, I'm so wow that the way forward is that women should get prepared. Women should understand the harmonized standards and begin and get digital and go for it. So thank you so much, Ms. Kemi. I'm sure a lot of participants have questions, so we will take questions later. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Ms. Kemi Arosanyin. Okay, we'll now call up our next presenter. And our next presenter is, Ms. Demitta Gyang. She is the Assistant Chief Negotiator stroke Head of AfCFTA, ECOWAS Department, Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations. She will be speaking on Nigerian women and Nigerian government preparedness on support frameworks. This is, I'll be reading her profile shortly. Mrs. Demitta Gyang is a trade expert stroke negotiator. Currently, she is the Assistant Chief Trade Negotiator and Head of AfCFTA, ECOWAS Department at the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations, with 14 years experience in trade policy making and trade negotiations. She holds a master's degree in international law and economics from the World Trade Institute, University of Bern, Switzerland. She was instrumental to Nigeria's effective participation of the AfCFTA Phase 1 negotiations, having chaired the dedicated session of AfCFTA chief trade negotiators that negotiated the AfCFTA protocol on trade in goods and several AfCFTA negotiating forums. She was also instrumental to Nigeria's adoption of the AfCFTA agreement, using her extensive knowledge of the agreement to lead Nigeria's enlightenment campaign across the public and private sector. She is a great leader. Demitta has detailed knowledge of regional trade and deep understanding of the dynamics of trade relations between developed and developing countries. She has served as a resource person in various sensitization programs for the private sector on relevant WTO agreements. She has work experiences from both World Trade Organization and the World Bank Growth and Employment Project. She is married with 2 children. Let us welcome Mrs. Demitta Gyang. You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Dr. Regina, and thank you, OWIT, for inviting me to be part of this deliberation. I must also thank the first speaker. She has really thrown up a lot of things that I started wondering, what am I going to be talking about? You know, because she really covered the subject extensively. And also, your president in her address, in her opening remarks, actually did cover a lot of aspects of what should be important in terms of implementing the African continental free trade area. I will take it from an angle of somebody who was there at the table and speak you through to what you should look out for. What are the instruments that should be used to implement the agreement? Now, the agreement itself, of course, has the agreement, and then it has 3 protocols already from phase 1, the trading goods protocol, and then the trading services, and then the rules and procedure for the settlement of disputes. And then the protocol on trading goods have 9 annexes, which are actually the effective instruments that would implement the protocol on trading goods, you know, ranging from the schedules of tariff concessions to trade remedies to non-tariff barriers, technical barriers to trade, sanitary and phytosanitary measure, transit procedures, customs, cooperation, and mutual administration. Now, in implementing the African Continental Free Trade Area, there are instruments that we need to look out for. Number 1 instrument is the schedule of tariff concessions? I would explain this. Now, the schedule of tariff concessions is actually your legal commitment saying that these goods that I want to remove the tariffs on, these are the goods and these are how I'm going to do it. These are the tariff lines and this is how I'm going to do it. And this is the period of time in which it will be done. Now, this is a very important instrument. Now, when you look at what should be looked out for in this particular this instrument to make it effective. Now, let me make this categorical statement. Women are impacted by trade agreements in different ways. They are impacted as consumers, they are impacted as workers, they are impacted as producers. And when you are looking out for the effective utilization of this agreement by women, you have to look at what the schedule says. You have to look at what is the schedule that Nigeria has tabled for the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. What is the schedule that South Africa tabled, for instance, for the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area? What is the schedule that any other state party in this AfCFTA, what is in their schedule? Because for you to get prepared, first, as the woman in the business, you need to know what is in the schedule. Now, let me break it down. In the schedule, the way it is agreed, you have 90% of the tariff lines that will go to zero in the first instance. Then after that, you have additional 7% that will go to zero after a longer period of time. Now, the question is, you are a woman in business. You are in a particular sector. You are interested in expanding your business in that sector. You are interested in enlarging your market. You want to go to the next market. If trade starts 1st of January 2021, the goods that you are interested in exporting, do they form part of the 90% that will be going to zero in the first instance? Or does your goods fall into the 7% that have been kept as sensitive products and as such will go to zero at a later date? Or more interestingly, are your goods in the 3% that state parties are allowed to reserve and not liberalize? This is very important. It is important to the woman as an exporter. It is important to the woman as an importer, because this is the new tariff regime. And if you must be expanding your business in this regard to enjoy the benefits that have been provided by the African Continental Free Trade Area, you need to know what is in the schedule. Are my goods, the tariff lines that I'm interested in, the tariff lines that I'm exporting in, are they part of the 90% that is going to zero in the first instance? Or are they part of the sensitive products, or are they part of the excluded products? In which case, you know that even though AfCFTA has come, your goods will still not go to those other African countries at a zero duty. You will be exporting them at the normal rates that you were exporting them with the normal tariffs. Now, this is the first aspect. So if you look at studies that have looked at women in trade and how trade impacts on women, you will realize that this is very important. Very important in the sense that with what I have explained, the scenario I have explained will determine how it affects you, will determine how the African Continental Free Trade Area affects you. It will determine if you are in the area, if you're in production, for instance, and your goods fall into the ones that will be liberalized immediately, it will have a different effect on you than it will have on the woman as a consumer will now be receiving those goods at zero rated duties, or the woman as a worker if she's working in that particular industry. Now, the second instrument with which this agreement will be implemented is the schedule of commitments, specific commitments, that is for trade and services. Now, if you look at how trade and services negotiations is structured, the African heads of state and government decided that we won't have a restless approach. We won't tackle all the 12 sectors of services at the same time. Let us take it bit by bit. Let us liberalize first 5 prioritized sectors, and then we will liberalize the other sectors gradually and eventually. Now, what should you as a woman in services business look at? You look at the 5 prioritized sectors. You look at whether that is the business that you are in. You look at, even if that is not the immediate business that you are in, you look at the one that you are in. Is it dependent on these sectors that will be liberalized in the first instance? Now, another thing to look out for, you need to know what is in the schedule. I said that for goods, you really need to know what is in the schedule, because that's the instrument with which you will be trading. That is what will determine what the customs people do when you get to the borders, right? So for trading services, when you look at the 5 prioritized sectors of transport, of business services, of tourism and tourism-related services, of banking and financial services, when you look at this, when you look at these sectors have subsectors. And in the way services trade is liberalized, you liberalize the subsectors. You don't give them, it's not the same approach to every subsector. So in a particular sector, you can liberalize one subsector and not liberalize the next subsector. And even in the sector you liberalize, you can liberalize some modes of supply of that sector and not liberalize the other modes of supply of that sector. So any business, any woman in business should look out for these things. What is happening to the sector that I am exporting, or to the sector that my business within Nigeria is dependent on the importation of? How is it reflected in the schedules? Because the schedule is the commitment that the countries have now actually made. Yes, the agreement has been done. You have the protocols, you have the guiding principles, you have everything that is intended to be done, but the instrument with which it will be done are the schedules. Now, I've talked about the schedules for trading goods. I've talked about the schedules for trading services. Now, let me talk about the annexes. You need to know what the annexes say. You need to know what the annex on non-tariff barriers say. How would we gradually eliminate non-tariff barriers? Because there is nothing that is as important or as powerful as an informed user of an agreement. If you are an informed user of an agreement, you have, first of all, you have jumped the greater hurdle of being able to participate in that agreement and being able to benefit from that agreement. When you don't know, you can show up at the borders moving your goods, and the same old rule will be applied to you because you don't know what is in the new rule, and you don't know that the terms and conditions for doing this business has changed. Now, enough of the technicality of what is in the agreements and the protocol. Let me point out something. In retrospect, when you look at the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area, beautiful, in the annex, in the preamble of the agreement itself, you have a paragraph talking about recognizing the importance of gender equality in international trade, among other things, human rights, socioeconomic rights, and all that, in international trade. And then you have the Article 3E, or in the objectives that talk about promoting gender equality in this. But if you're a lawyer, you know that if you have to debate this in a dispute settlement, you will know that an objective or a preamble is not the hard thing you need to be able to win a debate in terms of dispute settlement. What am I saying? What I am saying is that in retrospect, and with the part that gender needs to play in the African Continental Free Trade Area, and being able to benefit from the African Continental Free Trade Area through its implementation, perhaps there is one more thing that needs to be done. And that one more thing is perhaps to have an article on gender. There is none. There is no article in the African Continental Free Trade Area specifically talking about trade and gender. In retrospect now, perhaps what can be done is that the agreement provides for amendments. Perhaps it's time that someone agitates for the amendments of the agreement to include an article, specific article, since it can be found in the preamble and it can be found in the objective 3E, an article on trade and gender, spelling out, codifying the things that must be done so that this trade impacts and so that women benefit effectively from the African Continental Free Trade Area. So having said that, let's now bring it home. The topic you gave me says Nigeria governments and women, what are the support frameworks for the implementation of the AfCFTA? On the part of Nigerian government, as a matter of fact, preparation for the AfCFTA, because of the peculiarities that followed up to our signing the AfCFTA, government had actually committed human resources and other resources to looking into the agreement and ensuring that this agreement will be maximized and will be of benefit to Nigerians. If you recall, when Nigeria did not sign the African Continental Free Trade Area, the directive from government was go ahead and consult more extensively, consult more deeply, go ahead and sensitize more deeply, make sure all the stakeholders know, hear from the stakeholders. Do they want this? What do they want from this? And what do they want to see in this? And that was done. And so that gave the benefit of being that there was a 6 geopolitical zone sensitization. It gave the benefit of having Nigerians actually eschew the provisions of this agreement. And if you ask me, coming from that point of view, at least a trade policy community was built within Nigeria, because then I could hear people discussing the AfCFTA everywhere. It was all over the radio stations. It was discussed by the roadside. You're walking, somebody is likely going to say something about what is happening within the AfCFTA. And beyond that, after that geopolitical sensitization, which was led by the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations, women groups, by the way, we are invited at a particular point. Even domestic market women groups were invited to the sensitization. You now also had the impact and readiness assessment study, which government went ahead and asked the committee to go ahead and do the impact and readiness assessment study. It was from the recommendation of the impact and readiness assessment study that eventually the AfCFTA was signed. But part of what went into that impact and readiness assessment was a recommendation to have a committee already, an action committee, to look into the many things that might affect the implementation of the AfCFTA. So that structure was created and that structure was set up. It is the National Action Committee, and they've been working, trying to look into the various sectors and to see how to prepare Nigeria and Nigerians for the ultimate benefits of the AfCFTA. But coming to women, the question now is there any specific gender focus? My answer to that would be no, and it is not right. Why is my answer no? Trade agreements come from the point of gender neutrality, because like I said, there's no single article on gender in the African Continental Free Trade Area. And most agreements, though you have other agreements now trying to put an article on gender, specific trade and gender, some trade agreements now have that particular article, right? But this is not the case of the African Continental Free Trade Area for now. So the implementation processes have also assumed a gender neutral structure. But that can be corrected. It can be corrected. There should be a specific gender analysis done on the African Continental Free Trade Area, done on the schedules that have been submitted or proposed, to see how women, how it will impact on women-owned businesses. Recall, women are usually in specific sectors, more in specific sectors than other sectors, and the structure of their business differ a little from the structure of the businesses owned by men. So you can't apply gender neutrality, not in the implementation, not in any other thing. So it is very critical and very important that in the structure being set up by government, there should be a specific gender focus. It could be in form of a gender desk, or it could just be in form of a gender analysis of whatever proposals come on the table to see how women can benefit from the implementation of the AfCFTA. Now, the other thing that I need to point out is because of the gender norms that we know about, because of the socio-cultural and religious norms that do affect women, especially in the role they play in society, that do affect women when they enter into any venture, be it governance, be it economic or otherwise. There is also need to have some preferences in the implementation for women, because the truth is that if you give some preferences in the implementation for women, you would allow the women-owned businesses that opportunity to actually maximize the benefits of the AfCFTA. And I'm a woman, like they say, if you empower a woman, you know you have empowered an entire family. And if you have empowered an entire family, you have empowered a community. And you know, it dovetails into other things. You've empowered an entire country. So it is very important to have preferences in the implementation structure, focusing on gender. I've mentioned what one or two of those preferences could be. You know, I've talked about having a gender analysis. I've talked about having a gender desk. I've talked about perhaps you also need, you need a gender desk in the implementation structure. But for now, what we have effectively is a gender neutral implementation structure, but that can also be addressed. Thank you. You didn't tell me how much time I had, but thank you. Back to you, Regina. Yeah.
Thank you. You had 15 minutes, but you did a good job out of it. Thank you so much, Mrs. Demitta again. Thank you so much. Now, when you were having this presentation and while reading your profile, I discovered you were part of those that actually did the study for this agreement to be done. Now, yes. Now, you've talked so much about that we should be informed. We should be informed user of the agreement. The sensitization out there, I don't think a lot of us are informed of this agreement. And this poses a great danger. After listening to the presentation of Mrs. Kemi, and how if this is not implemented, how this can pull our economy to zero, I became afraid. I said, how are we going to do this? So during the Q&A session, you have a lot of questions to answer on this. How can we get the sensitization out there? How can we let people know what the agreement is all about? The instrument you have so much stressed. We'd like to know how we can get this out there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. All right. So we now go to our next presenter. She is Kezy Mukiri. Kezy Mukiri is she is a Nigerian. She'll be speaking on the Nigerian women in service and informal sector. That's what she'll be speaking on. Kezy is an African-focused trade lawyer, sustainability consultant and entrepreneur. She has a degree in law, a master's degree in international relations, and is currently undertaking a doctorate studies in trade and sustainable development. She is the executive director of Ignite Trade Africa and a senior partner at Mukiri Global Advocates. Kezy has a specific interest in inclusive trade and has served on the board of the Organization for Women in International Trade, OWIT. Nairobi chapter, where she was responsible and leading market access in has been honored with exception in their respective entrepreneurial and professional endeavors with distinctive voice and vision, and that are inspiring and innovating a new narrative of women's leadership in all walks of life. Kezy was selected for the prestigious Mandela Washington Fellowship, an initiative of President Barack Obama. In the same year, she was selected to join the Vital Voices Global Mentoring Program. Kezy is an alumni of Cherry Blair Mentoring Women Program and the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women Program. Kezy is an international keynote speaker on sustainable and inclusive trade, gender, and trade, among other related topics. Wow, fantastic profile. Kindly welcome Kezy Mukiri as she takes the next the speaking slot. You're welcome, Kezy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Regina. Thank you to the leadership of OWIT Nigeria. It is indeed a pleasure and a privilege to be joining us this evening. I'm joining you from Nairobi, Kenya. I have been thrilled to listen in to the presentations made ahead of me by Femi and Damaris ahead of me. Very critical issues raised, and they have provided a very critical background to part of the conversation that I will be leading in now. I want to take a private sector perspective to this dialogue on the CFTA and to speak predominantly as a woman in the delivery of services, and to give us what I would call a global perspective of the services sector, probably bring it closer home, take a continental lens and look at what is the services sector looking like right now, and then probably break it down to see what the opportunities could be. I must say that Femi has done a great job at providing the timelines, and I will not go into discussing what the structure of the CFTA is. Neither will I talk about the schedules, which Damaris has broken down very well. I will focus very specifically on the services sector and the protocol on trade in services. Allow me to share my screen, and do let me know if you're able to view the screen.
Okay, we can view the screen.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. A little background on myself. I work with Ignite Trade Africa, which is a consultancy firm based here in Nairobi. Our work really is to work with the medium and small enterprises, helping them create sustainable growth through successful expansion into African markets. And what you see here is just an outline of what we do from day to day, doing a lot of sustainable trade consulting, working with organizations that are looking for entry points into the African market. Let me reiterate, as Femi said, that with the formation of the CFTA, we on the continent need to know that the big boys are watching. The big boys have already interpreted the opportunity that the CFTA affords for them, and have already built in strategies towards entry onto the continent. And as a consultancy firm, a lot of the inquiries and the briefs that we're now handling are to do with market entry, are to do with overseas promotion and marketing and positioning specifically to benefit from the CFTA. So I think this conversation is really timely for us, not just to understand what the document contains, but to interpret it in a way that allows us as entrepreneurs to engage and to position ourselves for business. A brief background for us to understand is the mindset that the world has had previously. When we talk about international trade and export trade, you would have the mindset of containers. You would have the mindset of goods being packaged and shipped. But trade is way beyond transactional undertakings with goods right now. Trade in the 21st century has moved to a very complicated, interrelated web of complementary services. And important for us on the continent to note that services will play a leading role in the intra-African integration. Services are now tradable in themselves, but services also do contribute significantly in the trade of all other, essentially all other forms of trade. If we think about the agricultural sector or the manufacturing sector, we have underlying services in there, inbuilt, that aid the delivery of trade in those areas. The classification globally of services, important for us to understand really what do we mean by services. The UN Central Product Classification has provided a list or a breakdown of what services are. And this was done for purposes of providing a platform for engagement, even at the WTO level. And on the continent, as a background instrument, we need to understand what are the, what is the services sector comprised of. Damaris has broken down the key focus areas under the CFTA, but very broadly, the list provided here is a list of what the services, the global services sector includes under the UN classification. I don't need to go into that. I will focus exclusively on what the CFTA has listed out as priority areas. But as a background, the services sector is emerging as a key driver on global trade. If you look at statistics, and you will find this with UNCTAD or WTO, you look at statistics of global trade in the period between 2008 coming all the way to 2010. Let's give it even a 10-year frame. There's been a steep rise in the contribution of services when you do the matrices for global trade. At that 2019, global services export was valued at 6.1 US dollar, 6.1 trillion US. And we have, 68% of global trade being accounted for by services. 48% of global employment. And we look at African markets, this ratio actually goes higher. Whereas Africa is very dependent on the agricultural sector, you will find that a huge percentage of those in employment on the continent are in the services sector. And I think this is really critical for us as women, because the larger percentage of those employed in the services sector is women. Beyond that, it has been noted that the services sector is critical even for the achievement of the SDGs. We have SDGs that are solely dependent on the services sector. Things like access to quality healthcare, quality education. A number of SDGs are actually solely dependent on the services sector. So let's take a look at what has been the growth of the services exports by region. A very critical thing to note here is that there was an average increase in trade, global trading services by 7.7% as of 2018. But even more critical than the global average is the growth in trade or services within the African continent and the Asian continent. Is actually a tie there, 9.4%. There is a steady growth of the services sector, and we need to be able to interpret what this means for us, particularly for us as women in services, and to be able to interpret what the opportunity is for us. So digging deeper into that, different subsectors within the larger global services sector, the transport sector, travel, financials, and these are what we call business services. That's the financial, those insurance, those in intellectual property. And I have to point out, even from my legal practice, that for Africa, and I just jumped off a different webinar on intellectual property development on the continent. This is a huge area of opportunity for us to look into. Huge gaps. The continent has not very well exploited the opportunity to grow in IP. And we can look at even the difference when you look at Europe, how much growth there has been in Europe. Look at the yellow strip and compare that to what is happening on our continent. If you look at the blue in Africa, representing travel, and you begin to ask yourself now with COVID, the implications of over-reliance on the travel sector, which is an area that Africa has relied on, the tourism and travel sector. We have over-invested on that as a destination, as a continent. But you look at the implications of the travel risk, the travel restrictions, and then you begin to see that our investment is in an area that has a higher risk index. And then, of course, thinking that we have the opportunity for growth in professional services, as I've mentioned, intellectual property, but also in e-commerce, and we'll come to that. So within the continent itself, again, looking at the different regions on the continent, how we are faring in exporting services, huge reliance on travel, as you can see, that very large travel sector on the continent, and a very small contribution coming from goods-related services. And that would be in manufacturing, the value chains within value addition in agriculture, things like those. So I think generally we need to now realign. Yes, there's these opportunities, there's these large subsectors within the global services industry. Then there is the priority areas within the CFTA, but we need to go deeper and look at what is the output, what are the margins, where is there a good positioning for women in services to be able to leverage on. This graph simply shows us different trade angles. The blue is agriculture, but I want us to look at the green and how there's been growth over the years on the continent. Just again reiterating the fact that there is significant growth in trading services on the continent. And there is indeed a recognition of the role and contribution of the trading services in the growth and development of economies on the continent and around the world. So the impact on trade in services, I think it would be really ignorant of us not to look at what has been the impact on trade in services post the pandemic. Kemi, at the very beginning, gave projections, the World Bank projections on GDP contraction around the world. And we're looking at specifically on the continent, and what has been projected is that you have a higher rate of contraction, GDP contraction on economies that have got well-developed travel and tourism sectors, or those economies that are heavily reliant on the tourism and travel sectors. And you see that where you have a negative 81% impact on travel. And that is why I made the point earlier that we need to find ways of diversifying as a destination. When I say destination, I'm talking about a market, I'm talking about the continent, I'm talking about specifically our individual markets, to diversify where we have invested resources within the services sector, and to look for ways to get into sectors that have lower risk margin, that have a lower implication to global happenings that may inhibit trade. Again, specific lens on Africa, just to give us a perspective, and to also bring it home to us why we on the continent need to position strategically. The world has done the math. The world has looked at the data. The world has looked at the opportunity. And that is why we in the trade support space are seeing this massive drive into positioning towards the continent, towards finding ways to do business on the continent and with the continent. By 2030, it is estimated that 1 in 5 people will be African. That on the right there is a graph showing population projections, 2015 all the way to 2050. I mean, and it is massive. It is really huge, the numbers. And we were given at the very beginning of this presentation, the market size. The market size. One of the reasons why the CFTA is very attractive to different markets is, you know, it does away with the balkanization of markets, the smaller markets. The continent has not been attractive to do business with because of the size of our markets, very small economies. But when you create this larger trading bloc, you create an attractive trading partner, you create an attractive investment platform. You know, so it become more attractive to investors and other trading partners to do business with the continent. So 93% of Africans have access to a mobile phone, not necessarily a smartphone, but they have access to a mobile phone. And we now begin to look at what are the opportunities for technology-driven services. 11 countries have, within the continent, have more than 30% representation of women in their legislature. And this is an opportunity, and I'm glad that Damaris has provided a background for this, or a foundation for this, is that we have opportunity perhaps to lobby for gender inclusive policies, even towards the implementation of the CFTA. Allow me to mention at this point that the ratification, as much as we have celebrated as a continent, and our hopes have been lifted by the rapid ratification of the CFTA, the ratification of the CFTA in itself and of itself does not improve the trading environment on the continent. What has got impact for us as women and impact for SMEs, and what would drive the continent forward, is hidden in the implementation of that CFTA. And so we have to be very strategic in how we position and how we lobby and how we build advocacy platforms towards ensuring that you have gender inclusive policies towards the implementation. And another critical thing to note is that 30% of businesses on the continent are owned by women. A lot of these are small and micro, but it is something significant to note that if we want to build the capacity of women, and we'll be talking about the CBATs or the cross-border informal traders who have been driving international trade on the continent anyway for many years. If we want to build the capacity of these enterprises, it already shows you that we have an opportunity for enhanced participation of women in international trade, because women on the continent are already doing business. This graph shows the projections around Africa's GDP. And it was interesting to note that Africa's GDP growth is already above the world average, which doesn't quite sound believable. But let's look at the numbers. So Africa accounts for 17% of the world's population, but only about 3% of the global GDP. And we all know what that is. It points out to the failure to tap into the continent's developmental potential. The continent has had immense potential, but we have not known how to implement it. And I share the fear that Femi has. The CFTA is not the first regional, is not the first attempt at creating a regional trading bloc. Our different countries belong to different trading blocks, but we have had a failure in correct implementation or strategic implementation of the agreements that we have gotten into. And I think private sector, I said I would like to take a private sector lens, and I think for many of you on this call, important for us to understand this document, and even for us who are in the consultancy field, to demystify this document so that even the least of us is able to comprehend what are the provisions, what are the opportunities, and so that then we're able to engage our policymakers on the implementation of it. An opportunity here is 6 African countries are listed amongst the 10 fastest growing economies of the world. There is already shifts and movements and opportunities happening on the continent. It is projected that 24 million people on average will be living in African cities between 2015 and 2045. Again, an opportunity for business. And these 24 million people living in cities is also reflective of the state of education. Access to education has been enhanced on the continent. Access to information, access to broader networks has been enhanced. In fact, access to markets through the growth of e-commerce on the continent has been enhanced. All these different factors are coming together to point towards a readiness of the continent's private sector in playing a bigger role on issues of trade, and we need not miss the moment. I will not belabor the point made on the CFTA timelines, and I believe a number of us are already very familiar on what has happened in phase 1 and what we expect to happen in phase 2. The only thing I'd like to point out on this slide is for trade in services, the intended outcome is enhanced competitiveness, promotion of sustainable development. We need to find ways to incentivize increased investment towards the continent and towards specifically the services sector. And then there will be progressive liberalization of services trade. And I think that was alluded to. When we talk about enhancing competitiveness, one of the most, the reasons why it's been difficult to do, because when you look at intra-African levels of trade, why is it so difficult to trade with one another? Why is it so expensive to trade with one another? It's partly because of the cost of delivering services, even for the manufacturing and agricultural sector, so that by the time you're producing a rose, for example, and packaging it and putting it on the international market, you're already not competitive because of the inbuilt costs of delivering that product into the market. So there is need to look at ways in which you can enhance competitiveness to be able to play more aggressively on the regional scale, and even for businesses. Even within Nigeria, for me right here within the Kenyan market, just because we have the CFTA in place, coming into implementation in just a few weeks, just because the tool exists or the market has been expanded, does not necessarily translate to dollars in your account. You have to personally be looking at your service, your product, and thinking through, how do I play as compared to competition? Because the enhanced market, quite frankly, if you flip the coin, also translates to enhanced competition. So we have to be looking at how do we enhance competitiveness and how do we stand on the global market. These priority areas under the CFTA have been listed by the previous presenter. We have priority areas under the CFTA. There are 5 of them: the financial services, transport, tourism, communication, and business services. And for many of us, I know many of us looked at some statistics that show that a number of women on the continent are in the tourism and related services. That's hospitality. You'll find them in catering. You'll find them in related services. The same goes for business services. So those in communication, those in I think ICT is really rising. We have technology support services. We have a lot more women playing in those areas. Communication as well. So we probably need to start now thinking, how do we position? And Damaris has talked about the schedules and what are the areas that we need to look at. But key for me to mention is that we need to find ways of building competitiveness, particularly in areas where women are dominant. And this is in agriculture and also in services. We need to find ways to build competitiveness and ensure that we are able to drive more business in that area. Allow me not to focus too much here, but we'll be able to take any more comments during question time. So this is a landscape on trading services in Africa. And I think we already know what, you know, the exponential potential in tourism on the continent has been. Let us take note that the services sector, as much as I may present it here as a broad, you know, a broad sector that one would interact with, it is extremely heterogeneous. It is not what we would call a homogeneous, you know, concept. The same way that we must appreciate that gender and even women in trade, that women are not homogeneous. I always get really surprised when we talk about women as if they're just, you know, a trading block. They're not. They are very diverse. You know, let's talk about services, for example. We have, you know, professional services, you know, the bankers, the, you know, the lawyers, those in IP, those trading in different professional services. But the services sector also includes services that are not necessarily, you know, structured in a way that allows us to collect data and measure their contribution to the GDP. Like our hairdressers, you know, the hotels and those, all those others. But it is important to note that this sector is a major source of employment. In Angola, South Africa, and Mauritius, it accounts even up to 60% of the working population. But it is not a heterogeneous sector. And when we develop responsive policies towards implementation, we need to take note that even the mere structuring of the CFTA is likely to provide advantage to certain, you know, services sectors, subsectors within the services sector than it would to others. And it's important to take note of that. I think this has been mentioned greatly, but I think important for me to mention here is the need for us to identify interconnections between services. For example, if you are in the financial services sector, understanding that there's interconnection with, say, data, research, insurance. There are certain interconnections between the services that would allow you to either broaden your competitive advantage or would allow you to take advantage of forward and backward integrations as you package your service to become more competitive. Yeah, I'm just going to skip this slide. Perhaps the thing we will need to note as we get into implementation, and we talked about the fact that there exist the trade barriers and, you know, the tariff and the non-tariff barriers. And I think for a lot of women, we find ourselves struggling with regional and international trade because of non-tariff barriers. And there's been a lot of webinars on non-tariff barriers and a lot of conversations around that. Those gender inscribed barriers that hinder women from trading across the region. But I think an important one that we've probably spoken about in my own practice and in different platforms where I am at is the fact that we already have national structures or frameworks for the delivery of services. For example, for those who whose practice is guided by a professional qualifications body, you know, and the fact that you now, even as much as we liberalize, you know, trading services, you already have limitations that you may not be able to practice in a different market, or, you know, there are barriers such that you would need to incorporate a local in your, you know, in your organization to be able to do that kind of business. And all of these are, and others are non-tariff barriers that will definitely hinder trade in services across the different markets.
Okay, so thank you so much, Ms. Kezy. I think you need to round up now.
Yeah,
please.
So yeah, let me just bring this to a conclusion. We even within the services sector, we know that there are different, you know, lower hanging fruits for women, and then there are those that are difficult for women. And I think this is something that we can take note of. There are areas which are more competitive for women. There are areas where what we call the global profiteerarchy, where women are able to earn more, for the services they render. But then generally speaking, a study done will show that men even in the same service as women will earn a lot more than women. A quick comment on women in cross-border trade. Perhaps you can all get yourselves a copy of the 2020 Africa Trade Report, which I think finally has recognized the critical role of women in cross-border trade and has provided certain ideas or certain recommendations on the engagement and the empowerment of the CBITs. I'll not go into that. I will just list out a few conclusions here that we need to identify opportunities within the value chains, particularly within the rules of origin, where there are opportunities for women to provide accompanying services. That is something we all should do. And then identify linkages between trade services and then the preferential trading goods. And important for us to understand, if the different global players are already eyeing the African market, how will micro and small medium enterprises be able to compete for a piece of the cake? Competitiveness can be enhanced through collaborations. Build linkages within your own market, within the region, across the continent. Find, and I think organizations such as OWIT stand a very good place to help women build collaborative linkages to enhance their competitiveness. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Kezy. Fantastic presentation you have there. Thank you so much. The time has far gone. We will be calling our next presenter, Mr. Olivier Musafiri. He is the project manager, Africa. He will be speaking on global collaboration, unveiling TFO Canada programs in Nigeria. I will be reading his profile now. Olivier Musafiri is the project manager, Anglophone Africa. In his role, he is responsible for the design, implementation, monitoring, and reporting for trade-related activities in the region. Olivier has solid project management experience from different countries in Africa and Canada. This includes working as a program manager for United Nations Regional Program, where, among other things, he coordinated bilateral projects under United Nations Women and the government of Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of Congo on cross-border trade, agriculture, and value chain initiatives. Recently, he has worked as gender advisor with Vets Without Borders Canada for its program in Kenya and in South Sudan, with the Canadian Midwives Association as field operations officer. Olivier has outstanding experience in gender mainstreaming and capacity building, result-based monitoring and evaluation with a number of different donors, including Global Affairs, USAID, United Nations agencies, Norway, and the new Partnership for African Development, NEPAD. Olivier speaks over 5 languages, wow, including French and English, and holds different degrees from business, including disruptive strategy, executive education from Harvard Business School. Let us welcome Mr. Olivier Musafiri. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's a great pleasure to be sharing the e-stage with great ladies who have spoken before me. And on behalf of our Trade Facilitation Office Canada, I want to thank the leadership of OWIT Nigeria and OWIT International in general, because we have this partnership with OWIT International already. And I'm happy to see the Vice President here today. And the next session, I'll be speaking on TFO Canada initiative in Nigeria. Although we have other initiatives across Africa, and it's in line with the current topic of today on the Continental Free Trade Agreement. So allow me to share my screen. Is the screen visible? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. We can see it.
Great. Good. So that's what I'll be speaking on. TFO Canada is Trade Facilitation Office Canada. We are based in Ottawa, and originally formed in 1980. And this year we celebrated our 40th anniversary. And our statement of purpose is improving the lives of through creation of sustainable trade partnership for exporters from developing countries within with Canadian and foreign buyers. So basically, we are a non-profit organization where we support SMEs or other trade facilitation offices within developing countries across Latin America, Asia, and Africa to boost their trade into different markets. And of course, in line with today's topic, our strategic objectives, one is to support the women's economic empowerment through our trade program. We have several programs in different regions, but in Africa also I want to highlight that particularly in Nigeria, we just concluded one of the projects with ITC, where Nigeria was one of the beneficiary countries we had, including the neighboring country, Ghana. Now, currently, we have a new project, and this year, actually, in February, myself and our program director, Mary Heather, was with us this afternoon. We did our scoping mission in Abuja this February just to talk to different stakeholders in order to understand what are the needs on ground in regard to the women in trade for inclusive and sustainable growth. Why this project is important to us is that we know that women, often they've been left out through different initiatives. And of course, in conjunction with the Continental Free Trade Agreement, there is a need to respond to specific needs for the women in international trade to be able to fully take part in the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. But of course, we have other projects like making trade work for women in sub-Saharan Africa. But coming back to the projects that we are going to be implementing in Nigeria, this project, the OWIT project, or Women in Trade for Inclusive and Sustainable Growth, it's a project that is going to be implemented in 24 countries across Latin America, Asia, and Africa. But out of the 24 countries, 14, more than half, they're in Africa, and 12 of the 14 is sub-Saharan Africa. That means we are paying much attention in Africa, and this is one of the opportunities we want to bring for the women, of course, to be able to respond to their main challenges they are facing in regard to accessing international markets, but also in regard to Continental Free Trade Agreement, as we have heard from great presenters today, is that yes, this is one of the opportunities that is going to boost the intra-continent trade, but how are women going to be benefiting that? And we have heard from presenters that there is a challenge of gender not being mainstreamed into the policy, or not articles addressing the issue of the women. So this project is more of now coming to see what are the needs on ground for Nigerians, international traders or SMEs, to be able to tap into bigger markets. So in regard to Tier 4 Canada services, what we do, we have information services where we provide comprehensive online trade information services through our online database, which has quite enough information, and the guide on exporting to Canada. Although today we are looking more into the Continental Free Trade Agreement, but this does not also become also one of the information that could help in regard to preparing to enter into new market when this program launches. And the other thing is the market information papers. There are a variety of market information papers we have on our website, which can help businesses to understand how to prepare to venture into new markets. But of course, we also prepare several webinars where we bring experts to talk about specific topics and new trends that are coming. If we are looking into a sector of agro-food, we bring a lot of sector experts to talk about what are the trends, what can be done in order for SMEs to tap into new markets or new challenges. Now we have COVID, which has kind of changed everything that we traditionally used to do. Now changing into e-commerce is one of the areas that we provide webinars. We provide also advice on trade capacity building project with trade support institutional partners, where we help them to understand the new challenges or how to respond to current or any challenge that is revealed through either through the market entry studies by partner MBA programs across the country or other regions. But of course, we also provide the contact, which is very important. So once a company has registered on our website, for those who are interested in venturing into Canadian market, they're able to see the database of importers from Canadian perspective and to see how they can link with their business. And for those who are in our Export to Canada seminar in Abuja last February, they got more information on that. But also we do work with other stakeholders in order to make sure that we respond to specific needs. If the business want to enter the US or they want to enter the Europe market, we bring experts in those markets to support the SMEs. So this is how our website, when you enter into our website, it look like. So this is more on when, how to register. Once you have registered, you can do the exporting to Canada readiness quiz, which can also be similar to when you want to export to other markets, maybe within the continent. Let's say if you are interested in exporting to Morocco, there is a quiz that helps you to prepare your goods and what you need to take into consideration before you start exporting. And of course, there is much focus on the Canadian market, but some of this information are also kind of similar to what you need to do once you are entering to new markets within the continent. So once you have created your profile on our website, there is a dashboard where you see a newsletter. We provide this local market research, which have been done in different countries, and mostly maybe those countries are the ones that you are interested into entering. And of course, now the Continental Free Trade Agreement coming into effect next month, which means now more attention will be taken into this. And during the discussion, I was seeing some of the charts that are showing that how foreigners are kind of really coming to Africa to see how they can grab this opportunity to make sure that they're the one like accessing it even before the locals. So this is an opportunity to look into how women can really enter into this opportunity, or how they can grab the opportunity and be the front beneficiaries of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. So that's how the page, once you have signed in and customized dashboard based on your sector. So it means the information that you selected to be feeded into your dashboard will be coming. And of course, the full access for those who are interested in entering the Canadian market, and more than 20% sector-based market information papers are available for free. And the trade news, we normally put the export trade fairs. I think in the presentation earlier, they mentioned about the expo in Kigali taking place next year in September. And these are the ones that we are focusing on, and to make sure that the women can access these opportunities within the continent. If this trade is going to take place in Africa, this should be one of the areas we target, so that the women can meet the potential buyers, or they can learn from one another, not only just exporting their goods, but also creating that linkages between the exporters and the buyers, where you can go and meet a potential buyer, know what they want, what quality they're looking for, so that in the future you can prepare your business to meet such kind of demands. Now, going straight to the project in Nigeria, which is also part of the bigger project we have on the continent. Out of the 24 countries, as mentioned earlier, 14 being in Africa and 12 in sub-Saharan Africa. And of course, most of other countries are the neighboring countries with Nigeria, where cross-border trade could be one of the easiest of seeing this opportunity. If we are looking at Nigeria, and we have Ghana, we have Benin, we have Cote d'Ivoire, we have Morocco, and we have like Egypt, we have Ethiopia, and so many other countries. So how can women in Nigeria really have like a collaboration or learn from one another, although there is kind of this knowledge of understanding that there will be a competition once the Continental Free Trade Agreement is coming into effect, but how the women in Nigeria are being prepared to become more aggressive in terms of competition when this opportunity comes in next year. And the project is mainly funded by the government of Canada through its International Development Program or agency called Global Affairs Canada. And the project is a 5-year project. Now we are almost in final stage of establishing our partnership on ground in Nigeria, and we hope the women will see this as a great opportunity for them to build the capacity or to help them to boost their business. And of course, the SMEs will be supported to participate in the virtual and in-person trade fairs, like the one I mentioned in Kigali coming next year, but also support the capacity building of the trade support institution on ground to be able to respond to such needs. And having mentioned earlier about the issue of gender in the Continental Free Trade Agreement, so that's where we are looking on how the trade support institutions to be gender sensitive, or to bring the capacity on gender mainstreaming, so that they can understand fully, or they can be equipped to understand or to look into more details how this policy is going to help the women in general. But of course, the women exporters will also get support to participate in conferences. There are specific conferences where we see as more opportunity for them to learn from others. If there is kind of knowledge sharing in regard to how successful business has been doing in one of the country, and maybe they're in the similar field, those women will be supported to participate in those conferences. It can also be a training that is related to how to prepare export for a certain countries. And looking at the main focus of the project in the next 4 years to come, we'll be providing the training of the board or senior management on gender mainstreaming for the partner organization. We'll be training, providing training of trainers. So for the trainers who are already providing support to the SMEs, we want to build their capacity based on the findings we'll get from the local market research. And from there, we're also looking to train at least 112 SMEs, where 86 will be women-led SMEs. And in regard to participation in trade mission, we are focusing on the in-person, if, of course, we are able to return to the normal or the traditional export missions where travel will be more flexible or easy to do. The 30 women in the country will be facilitated to participate. But also with regard to e-commerce, which is becoming now one area that we need to focus on, based on the reality that we have all faced during this year, 16 SMEs will be supported to participate in those virtual trade mission, where at least 8 will be women-led SMEs. And of course, all these numbers will be kind of linked into the findings of the country local market research, which will be conducting soon after the holidays. And of course, the technical assistance, which will be in relation to attending very targeted conferences and the training, and provide also the lead exporters, if we have known lead exporters, women in the country who can mentor or coach other SMEs. And of course, we'll be also looking at which main country is being targeted by Nigerian SMEs to be the destination market, and we'll bring at least 2 lead buyers to come and meet the SMEs on ground. So
okay, thank you so much, Mr. Olivier. Please, can you round up?
That's what I wanted to share.
Okay.
Around to answer any question you have, and soon I will be sharing with you the link where you can go and register, and from there you can access more support in regard to your question for TFO Canada initiatives on the ground, but also accessing these free guidance or materials that will lead to your knowledge on exporting to either Canada or any other neighboring countries in the region. Thanks a lot for having us.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much. It has been a very fantastic evening here in Nigeria, and all 4 speakers have been fantastic. They've given us insightful presentation on how AfCFTA can be implemented here in Nigeria. We will be taking few questions because time is far gone. This is 8:10 Nigerian time, and we hope to round up and be done with these by 8:20. So we have approximately 10 minutes more. So we'll be taking 1 or 2 questions, and we have so many questions here. For those that still want to send questions or those that we might not answer their questions, please feel free to send in your questions to us. I will type in our email ID so you can send all your questions. We'll be glad to answer you. Okay. We have a question here. Thank you, Demitta. So much details and information provided. Please, how can we get the schedules and annexes to the AfCFTA agreement? So the question here is for Demitta. Could we get the schedules and annexes to the AfCFTA agreement? Then another question is, this segment is revealing. I know nothing about this liberalizing a sector, schedule, or the concession. Please, can we have the recorded version of the presentation sent to our mail? Okay, we will do that. We'll send the recorded version to our emails. Then also how do we get to participate in the upcoming event in September 2021 in Rwanda? I think that same question goes to Demitta. Then how do we assess? So a lot of people are asking about the scheduled documents. So how do we assess these documents, please? Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself, Demitta. Muyiwa, please, can you help?
No, I can't do it from here. She has to unmute herself. So I'll keep trying to get her to do it. I've sent her a message now.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic.
Oh, good, she's back.
Okay, so I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so all the schedules you have right now for the AfCFTA for 1st of January are initial schedules. Eventually, they will be finalized. When schedules are finalized, customs of every state party should gazette it because it becomes their new tariff book to the rest of Africa. Okay, and so customs has just the way you can access any other tariff book. You can access the tariff book because that becomes your tariff book for the rest of Africa. You can access it from the customs service. In terms of in terms of participating in the September 2021 in Kigali, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council actually led the participation the first time that Intra-Africa Trade Fair took place. So from Nigerian Export Promotion Council, they actually took some of the businesses to the one that took place in Cairo. So the Nigerian Export Promotion Council will get in touch with them. They put together the businesses that go under the flagship of government to these events, so they will be able to educate you better. So between the Nigerian Export Promotion Council and the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, the unit on intra-Africa trade, these two places will be able to assist with that. Yeah, that's it.
I can quickly speak more to that, the Intra-Africa Trade Fair. I serve on the Advisory Council of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair. So thank you, Demitta, for that advice. Yes, maybe the first point of call will be the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, but we all know that governments, there's limitation to the number of businesses that they can take to an event. Yes, the last one that was held in Cairo, Nigerian Export Promotion Council took some businesses there, but in case you don't get on their list, part of what we have discussed here today, you also have to make a plan to go there yourself if you are really interested in exploring the regional market. And you can do that by registering to be an exhibitor on the Intra-African Trade Fair website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We won't be taking any further questions because our time is fast spent. I will just wrap up on some of the points. speakers have spoken on this evening. From Kemi, she talked about effective implementation of the AfCFTA program or agreement is critical for Nigeria. And she mentioned why it is critical. One, if we don't do something, we don't implement it right, the market share of small businesses will reduce. We'll have foreigners encroaching and invading our market space, and that will lead to further closure of our businesses. And also, she stressed that the effective implementation of the AfCFTA is the only lifeline we have to reboot our economy now. So this is very critical, and I think we should focus on this. The way forward, she talked about increased trade. So she has said that we should promote export, in regional and internationally, export of goods and services. And also she raised a concern in the way forward. 51% of women are involved in informal trade. And this informal trade is unstructured, and women could be posed, to some dangers involving in this kind of trade. So it is very important that the government take cognizance of this and try to help most of the women have structured trade formats. And she talked about preparedness of the Nigerian women, that we should focus on expanding our business. We shouldn't look at the local side only. We should think of expanding to Africa and outside Africa also. Now, Demitta, we've already talked about the structures, and she has explained how we could get some of those documents. And Kezy talked about gender inclusion in the implementation of AfCFTA. All the speakers talked about that, and talked about how we could get that included in the policy, in the agreement. So I think we need to advocate more on that. And again, Kezy talked about demystifying the document. So we need to understand this document, the agreement, for us to be able to implement rightly. And finally, Mr. Olivier talked about the TFO, and we can get more information about this on the website. So we've gone so far. I can't list out all the points listed here that I would have, to wrap up the program. And I can see that on the chat box, Olivier has put in the website of the TFO Canada, so you could also check there and visit the site. So it has been a fantastic evening. It has been a very enlightening and insightful webinar, and we hope to have more of this, because we really need to unravel the mystery around the AfCFTA and AfCFTA agreement, and we have to see how we implement it well in Nigeria, so as to build and boost up our economy. I will now call up our President to give the vote of thanks. Ms. Blessing Irabor.
Can you unmute me? Thank you, thank you, our moderator. I really want to appreciate the good work you did this evening. And I want to say a big thank you to all our speakers. I can't thank Mrs. Kemi enough from the World Trade Center, who did a lot of justice to today's topic. Demitta from the Trade Negotiation Office, who is a big sister. Kezy all the way from Nairobi, Ignite Africa. Olivier from TFO Canada. Thank you so much. And off to all our participants, I really want to say a big thank you to all of you who attended this webinar this evening. Please, let's keep this conversation going, and let's make sure that women actually benefit from AfCFTA, because it is something that has come, that is just with us right around the corner. And we just have to do the needful so that women can benefit. So with this, I just want to say thank you to everybody who was part of this webinar. And we'll be having our second series by January to look at some critical issue in terms of how we're supposed to prepare to get into the AfCFTA market. Thank you, everyone. And thank you once again for joining us in this webinar. God bless you and good night.
Thank you, everyone.